legendary series of talks with Stephen Yee, Hlöðver Sigurðsson, and Edward Costello on the Csound Web-IDE.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, today I'll be talking about a online Csound Web-IDE. Just a bit of an agenda, talking a little bit about Csound and its current ecosystem. Then I'll talk about the Web-IDE and talk about our project goals. And then spend some time demonstrating where we're at with the system. And then conclude with some future work. So for those who may not know about Csound, it is a sound and music computing system that's fully programmable via its domain-specific language. It's been around since 1986. It has its roots in music end systems, tracing back to Music 4. And it's really evolved over the many years that it's been around. Currently, well, I would say that originally Csound was a kind of command line program. You would write code, you would run Csound, execute the code, and out would come an audio file. And then you would iterate upon this over and over again as your kind of process to make music, right? That was in 1986. In the 90s, we had real-time audio, interactive audio systems. And in the 2000s, Csound really changed. The system of Csound became not an executable, but a library that could be embedded within other systems. The current center of the Csound ecosystem is libcsound, and it has a C and C++ API. It has a number of language bindings in Java, Go, Rust. People have used it from Lisp and JavaScript via Node. It has been ported to a variety of platforms, running on embedded systems, mobile, desktop, and supercomputer. And since 2014, it has been present on the web platform. All right. So at the Web Audio Conference, we've presented a few times about different versions of Csound that have been compiled to run as asm.js, compiled into portable native client, and last year we presented on a WebAssembly version of Csound that ran with the audio worklet and script processor node. A brief view of our current ecosystem. We have Csound running within the browsers. We have it running on desktop systems, embedded platforms like Bella and Raspberry Pi, mobile systems like Android and iOS, and Csound has been run in platforms like Unity and Unreal, as well as Node.js. All right. I mentioned this because what I'm going to show about this Web IDE is a kind of an entry point into this ecosystem that starts on the web. Right? It allows us to kind of get started with Csound in one place, and then take that work and that knowledge and move it to other platforms. Right? So some use cases, what do people use Csound for? Well, synthesis and sound processing and composition, classically. Sound design. I would say also interactive real-time audio systems. And also in the past 8-10 years, increasingly for embedding it within music applications. Also for education, Csound has long been used for teaching computer music, and for commercialization, using Csound within commercial applications. It's permissible due to its LGPL license. So the Web IDE, it's a kind of a new project. It's almost beta at this point. And I'll show where it is today. It's a browser-based IDE for Csound, project creation and dissemination. It's a zero install solution. You just load it. It loads the WebAssembly version of Csound, and it's a consistent environment. All right. So for me, one of the big things about using computer music tools and teaching with it is it's really hard to deal with the number of different varieties of students' computers, as well as trying to work with very locked down labs We're kind of excited that this can run within the browser. And we're looking at this as a community platform for our Csound community to kind of build up a number of things which I'll mention in a moment. So our goals. Technical goals. One, we want to recreate the desktop-based development practice that people have had for many years using Csound on their desktop systems. And to do that, that means that we had the requirement to have support for multi-file projects, right? In Csound, you can have includes, which is what people often do to modularize their code. We also needed the support for resource files, like loading audio samples and data text files. And really what we wanted to do is kind of recreate the file system experience and the way of organizing projects via file system within the browser. We wanted to support both real-time projects and rendering to disk, because these are both classic kind of ways that Csound is used. And I think those are most of the kind of major initial goals that we're looking for. And I'll discuss some further goals in future work. In terms of ecosystem, we have goals for this system to be a place where we can create new projects, a system that we can learn, discover other people's work, a place to learn about Csound usage and practice, learn from each other, and hopefully to build up an online community hub for the practice of using Csound. And ideally, a place to kind of maintain the history of these projects and to build up a history of work online. So I'm going to spend most of the rest of the time demoing. First thing I'll show is kind of just the site where it is today, about accounts and profiles, some social features that we've had implemented so far. I'll walk you through a project using the editor and how we can look up documentation. And then I'll do kind of two demonstrations, one of a classic kind of desktop-based workflow that for rendering in real time and rendering to disk for composing. And then a second demonstration with live coding-based workflows, which could be useful for in the process of teaching, as well as while you compose and maybe as a system for performance. Okay. So the address of the site is ide.csound.com. This is currently where it's at. And if you go to the page, you'll see that it's very barren at the moment. Just the front page just says it's currently under development. There is a login area in the upper right. On the left, there is a drawer that slides in with persistent links to the site documentation, telling you, what to do, how to get around the site. It's also kind of being filled in at the moment. We have a link for reporting issues and a link to the GitHub project because this site is also open source. And I will mention that the site, it's a bit in the paper, we're using on the client side React, Emscripten, especially the Emscripten file system, and WebAssembly version of Csound, Material UI. For our server side, we're actually using Firebase for hosting and for all of its other services. So let's say I wanted to start using the Web-IDE. Now, there will be a global search feature for searching across the site. It's not yet there, but for now, I'll go through this login process. You can create a new account through email and password, or through OAuth authentication through Google and Facebook. And I will use Google. And now I'm logged in. So once I'm logged in, I can go to my profile page. And you'll see I have a photo, some biographical information, some links to myself, and a list of my projects, right? If you want to view projects, I'm going to show this in a incognito browser. The profile there is ide.csound.com/profile/Stephen Yee. You would see, sorry. You would see there's a bit of a break there with the link, but you can also view my profile as a non-logged in user, and you can go and explore the projects. For example, if you wanted to see what projects I have tagged with Web Audio Conference 2019, you can see I have them there. You could say, oh, Stephen's got a version of John Chowning's Styria that was reconstructed by Kevin DeHaan. So, audio play. Okay, let me try. Yeah. All right. So, in terms of history, we're talking about a project that was done in 2007, I guess through 2010, and it's a kind of Csound version of John Chowning's Styria that, for all intents and purposes, we hope to be persistent and enduring for many, many years through this system. We could go in and explore, learn about his usage of parallel carrier, single modulator, FM synthesis, so on, right? So if I go back, I might try, say, clicking on this button to hear what this project might sound like. All right. Prior to actually going to check out the project, maybe kind of quickly audition like this playlist of everyone's projects and say, oh, that sounds really interesting. I'll go check it out, right? And again, in terms of history, this project, Trapped and Convert by Dr. Richard Boulanger, was written in 1979 for Music 11, rewritten or updated in 1986, and also in 1996, and runs today in the browser in this platform. Right. Now I'm back to my own logged in view, and I can see that I have a number of my friends, Ed and Hlöðver, that I'm following, and I can go and click on them to see their profiles and see their projects as well. I can get their information and see their links to their websites. And you can say hello to Hlöðver. And this is the aspect of trying to have a social platform and a place that we can learn about each other and learn about each other's works. So I will show now the kind of idea that, let's say I'm working in Csound in a kind of classic way. I might be writing some code. In this case, this was in response to a question on the Csound list about do we have a cubic interpolation system for randomized lines, and I kind of wrote something and I ran it. All right, sorry, yeah. But we can imagine that I was working on this and coding it, and then maybe I wanted to render the disk, right? So in the background, we don't have a spinner at the moment. It's actually using a web worker and running the WebAssembly version of Csound as fast as possible. And it is rendering this piece, and it is now downloaded to my computer. I can open it in VLC, and I have the WAV file that was generated. show very quickly the live coding kind of system. So in here, I have another project example where I have my livecode.orc kind of library of user code for live coding. I'm going to press R to run the project. And in this session, I have a kind of empty, kind of just some starter code. And then maybe I'll So you can see that you could be generating new instruments, live coding, experimenting. In this case, I'm using a sample that I uploaded, right? And if I wanted to, say, add a new audio file, I could load this sample from the dirt sample set, wait a moment. Hopefully, yep. Replace what audio file I'm using. Right. Okay, I will stop here with this part. So you can see that we do have audio file sample upload. We have a file system. We have the ability to export the project as a zip file. Then you can run it on your desktop, use it elsewhere. And I will just go really quickly through future work. We've gotten pretty far. We're probably getting close to an open beta, and we still have to implement things like code completion. Web MIDI and audio input is available through Csound, the Web Audio Csound, but we don't have it exposed in the Web-IDE yet. Visualization, oscilloscopes and spectrograms, global search, social features like likes, the ability to quickly share to other social media platforms like Twitter, and other kinds of things that come from social coding platforms like CodePen and Glitch, the idea for project forking, template projects, anonymous projects for just quickly going in and editing. For us, having a GUI editor will be a very nice thing. Offline usage, and then hopefully we'll look at exporting to Cabbage so that we can build VST and AUs, audio units. Exporting to my own program, Blue. Looking at things like web audio modules and web audio plugins, and maybe exporting standalone applications from the Web IDE. Okay, so that's it. Hopefully, if you have a chance to experiment with this, maybe take a note of, we'll probably be opening it up for general usage in the next couple of weeks. Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
All right. Do we have any questions for Stephen?
Yeah.
And just as a note, I'll be checking the Slack channel, WAC 2019, so if you have questions there too.
Hi, thank you a lot. I'm just curious, how much of this is open source? Like you mentioned, there's a backend running in Firebase, and
Yeah.
the user interface is all running in the browser.
Yeah, yeah. The only part that might be considered closed is Firebase. Everything else is the source code for the front end is on GitHub. Csound is open source, LGPL2. Just about everything else is open source. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
So for social features, are you thinking about, so when you share projects on social media, will they be in an iframe, or will you make a sort of recording, an audio or video that will be shared? Do you have any thoughts on that?
For sharing, no, I think it's like links to the project so that people can go in. As it is now, as an anonymous user, you can still look at other people's projects. You can't save anything, but you can actually run other people's projects, go in, look at their code. I think the next thing to do from there is project forking, so that if you look at a project that you think looks interesting, fork it to yourself, your own projects, and then start editing and then experiment. Yeah.
As they're getting ready, I'll ask one more, I guess.
Yeah.
So social networks tend to have a fairly standardized structure at the moment. Have you noticed anything? Are you planning anything specifically for making music through Csound to change the network or make it better suited for this kind of process?
I think it's kind of early for us, right? So we just needed to get the groundwork going. I think it's going to be a kind of iterative process to see what comes out of the social features that we're putting in. I think we're looking at CodePen a lot as a kind of model, and also glitch.me as kind of ways to see how social coding is kind of going about in those worlds, and seeing how we might be able to learn from that for ourselves. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Stephen.
Great. Thank you.